Press Control to crouch.
The Crouch Peak Podcast.
Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Crouch Peak Podcast. Off of hiatus. As always, I am your host, Lucas at Dust2. It has been quite some time since the last time we spoke, a little bit over a month, probably closer to a month and a half now. There has just been so much going on in the realm of Counter-Strike, and for me personally, a lot going on outside of Counter-Strike. But we are on the other side of that, and that is no longer important. What is important is I am here ready to provide you one of the top-notch podcasts in the CSGO community. And not only that, I am ready to bring you the best recap I can for the PGL Antwerp Major and preview for IEM Dallas, which I will be at. So for those of you that are attending IEM Dallas, I hope to see you there. Say hi to me. I'll be there all week, and or you can DM me on Twitter. So whatever you want to do. And of course, we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. Obviously, the major just happened. So before we look ahead to Dallas, I'd like to reel it back and, of course, start with Antwerp. And, of course, starting with the North American teams, because that's what we do here at Crouch Peak. And I'm going to start with Complexity. Complexity entered this event with 4 major rookies, Grim being the only person to have been at a major prior with Liquid. And, already this lineup is young. They're kind of struggling entering this event. So high hopes for this team, probably not necessarily in this event, considering most of them were entering the major for the first time. And there was some drama surrounding the travel for this team. I believe, if I remember correctly, they may have landed a little later than everybody else. And then at some point through this challenger stage, if memory serves me correctly, 1 or 2 Complexity players was sick with food poisoning throughout this little stint. Not that I'm condoning the 1-3 record, of course, but nor am I excusing it. I'm just saying, there were some lingering circumstances that may have prevented them from doing as well as they could have. But of course, this was their first attempt as a 5 together, so. Maybe it was a little unrealistic to say that they were going to qualify regardless, but nevertheless, when you look at how the players did, really Floppy was the only one who ended above a 1.0 rating, and even at a 1.08, less than stellar. None of the 5 members of Complexity ended the event positive with KD, and the only win that Complexity mounted was over IHC. And for all intents and purposes, this was their first legitimate showing on an international stage. So how much is it worth? Not necessarily a whole lot. And then when you factor in the best of 3 loss to domestic rival Liquid, who is also slipping, the loss to Outsiders, who is no longer a functional 5, same with Liquid according to reports, or rumors, I should say, both. And then Vitality, a team that didn't even qualify, and of course on paper significantly better than Complexity, but again, didn't even qualify. So not a terribly difficult schedule, at least through the challenger stage, just when you consider Outsiders disbanded now, Liquid prepared to be separated, IHC did not qualify, Vitality did not qualify. So obviously these results leave a lot more to be desired if you're a fan of Complexity and NACS in general. For me, the most disappointing thing about all of it, besides the fact that there were uncontrollable factors like the sickness, and this kind of rings back to some of the troubles they ran into earlier in this year during the Kato run, I believe it was Kato, and there was some COVID issues. So that was another unfortunate thing that's kind of hindering their potential growth. But no matter what, the number one talking point when it comes to this lineup has got to be Junior, and I think that's a byproduct of the fact that I don't want to rag on Junior because I like Peyton's tenacity, even during the slump that he individually is going through and as the team has been going through. He's been unafraid to voice his opinions through these interviews. Obviously, that 50-50 quote is something that's coming back to haunt him every now and again. But he hasn't faltered in his tenacity or his drive, at least from my perspective, which I find commendable, especially considering like he was one of the worst rated players at this event while also wielding the op with the magnifying glass on him. Like a lot of people were anticipating, what would be done by Junior after these comments. He's kind of been in a little bit of a slump since joining Complexity. He hasn't quite produced at the same level he did at Bad News Bears. And so I know that he has drawn a lot of ire because of a lot of these variables. So I'm not quite ready to give up on Junior, but I do think that management has to make a decision of what they want from this 5. And Jason Lake was pretty open about his support of them as far as like long-term support after they were eliminated on Twitter. He replied to a fan tweet and basically was like, no, we're in this for the long run. We knew it wasn't going to be easy, but we are here. And I would like to pick his brain potentially if I see him at Dallas. And I would love to see and hear his thoughts on this current process. We know that the term long-term and like the scope of like what people perceive to be long-term in Counter-Strike does not often pan out as far as like what is tangibly set. So like we talk about Fallen with Liquid, he signed a 3-year contract, and that's a pretty long-term contract, but he only made it 12 months. So, and I mean like 9-10 months in, the writing was on the wall. So long-term in theory is not quite the same as in practice in Counter-Strike. So I am intrigued to see how long this long-term project will go with Complexity. Moving away from Complexity, looking at Liquid, this was quite the roller coaster, if I do say so myself. Obviously, kicking off the first stage 0-2 after dropping Inferno games to G2 and Imperial. The G2 one stings a little less than the Imperial one, just because, when you are weighing the two, you are expecting G2 to have the upper hand. Now, of course, NA bias is going to prevent me from accepting the fact that they could have lost to Imperial. And now the way that they did, it's obvious Imperial came better prepared. They were the better team that day and probably the better team in general. Now they turn it around. They kick it into high gear with their backs against the walls. They win best of 3s against 9Z, against Complexity, and against Astralis. But man, was that labored in this first stage. It was really painful to see a lot of the assurances that we received kind of fall through. They were mildly competent on pistol rounds, like nothing too crazy, nothing out of the ordinary. A lot of the reasons why shox came into the team beyond just like general impact, the mid-round stuff, the eco stuff, the pistol stuff, they weren't looking terribly strong in those fields. On top of that, it was really obvious that shox was uncomfortable, and I can't tell if that was a direct correlation to Elysia's play or not, but it took him a few games to get the ball rolling, and then as a byproduct of that, we saw kind of how the product looks when Elysia isn't firing on all cylinders alongside NAF per se, or Elysia and OC, or NAF and OC, some mixture of those two players, two of the three basically. And I mean, it was scary. It was just absolutely scary. And then what happened was they scrape by this first stage, go to the next stage, and then they just get obliterated by everybody else into the legend stage. So, the win over Astralis was a very good and fulfilling short-term high, at least for me. Like I wrote that article on Dust 2. I did the opinion article, why they will beat Astralis. I firmly did believe that, even though I didn't fully believe in the product Liquid was offering. But I did believe that in the moment, if things kind of worked out in Liquid's favor, especially when it came down to the picks and bans, I thought they could do it. And it just so happened that Astralis was in worse condition than Liquid and was in somehow a position to go Vertigo Ancient, which was the only way I could have foreseen that happening. And sure enough, it did. And when we're trying to gauge what Liquid wants to be as an organization in Counter-Strike, which of course we look back to the Grand Slam, and obviously this is an organization that expects titles. They expect to be competitive at the top level. We're looking at that first stage. They didn't play any teams that ended up making top 8. And then we look at that second stage, at the Legend stage, and they only ended up playing 2 teams that qualified to top 8. So through that first stage, G2, Imperial, 9Z, Astralis, Complexity, only one of those teams advances. And then we look to that next stage at the Champions, or the Legends, excuse me. And we're looking at Vitality, Furia, Heroic as the 3 teams that Liquid played to go 0-3. Furia makes top 8, Heroic makes top 8, Vitality does not. And no matter how you kind of break this down, no matter which way the cookie crumbles, these 3 matches right here are a good standard, I suppose. If you're going to go into this event and you're going to lose to these 3 opponents, these 3 are a part of that standard of if you're going to be a competent tier 1 team. So Liquid comes in here and they get, they don't even get 10 rounds on 2 of the 4 maps in defeat. So obviously after exiting this event, the writing was on the wall when it came to, obviously some lineup changes needing to be done. But in my opinion, this goes deeper than just simply swapping out shox. I don't know if just removing shox will do the trick. It's just really tough for me to put all of the blame on one person when we are talking about an organization that has struggled to make impressive roster decisions, at least through the first 2 years, or the last 2 years, excuse me. People had a lot of ranging opinions about the Stewie and Fallen decision. And then, of course, now Nitro coming back. These things have drawn certain criticisms. People are still up in the air about what the final product is looking like and if it was worth it. And so I don't know if just swapping out shox is going to be enough unless you get some kind of superstar. And so now this leads us to the next question. After Complexity and Liquid both flounder at Antwerp, what is next? Now, obviously, short term, the answer is nothing because we have Dallas coming right up. There's just no time for any decisions to be made as far as rosters are concerned. But I do think that for Liquid, Dallas probably shouldn't matter, no matter what. If they're unhappy with shox and they're ready to move on, a random, victory at Dallas with shox isn't going to change anything. So, I mean, based on what I could probably figure out, if I had to guess, they're probably just going to ride it through this event, especially if they're serious about replacing him. It's not much left to try and gain from this tenure. It's not much left to learn from this core or anything like that. It's just probably best to get it over with and move on, pug it out, and just kind of move forward. Who do Liquid look at moving forward? That is the tough question, assuming they do remove themselves from shox. I don't know if sitting here and trying to calculate the best North American prospect is suitable in one podcast episode, just because so many variables to work out. Realistically, they probably wouldn't be able to take away or to find themselves a new North American replacement unless they took away from one of the other 2 available NA teams, which would be EG and Complexity. So we're talking Floppy, Automatic, somebody like that. And then pretty much anybody beyond that, you'd have to make a pretty solid argument for, because statistically speaking, they're probably not doing terribly impressive at the top level. When you think about the rest of EG's lineup, Complexity's lineup, they haven't really given themselves much reason to suggest they should be on Liquid's roster. So then you kind of look at the lower talent, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. They're still trying to figure out OC. And then, of course, Grimm kind of blew up in their face. So you don't just want to keep churning in new talent, young talent, and just hope that you find like the next star. So logic would suggest if they're not going to roll with Tim or Floppy, then you probably point at somebody European, which, of course, I tweeted this earlier in the week. Actually, it was yesterday. I don't know why I said earlier in the week. But, like Yekindar is right there. Every team in the world that is not FaZe pretty much should at least inquire about him from, just the standpoint of how much can I get for him. And because you never know what's going to happen with those negotiations. And honestly, Liquid winning the Yekindar sweepstakes, I think would be pretty amazing for them. Just what he's able to do for the team and what it would do on paper when you look at what kind of plagues this team a lot. Yekindar would really be able to come in and be the hammer. And I think that would be really good for Liquid's short-term and long-term success. And on top of that, Yekindar actually did some camera work at the Major. And no, not at the Major, excuse me. He was on HLTV Confirmed for quite some time during that live episode. And I thought he was pretty charming, pretty witty, pretty smart, good on the camera. Obviously, that's a different kind of work that he's doing as opposed to like being in server with new teammates and stuff. But what I gathered from him during that face-to-face time, seemed like a nice kid. I don't know him personally, obviously, but that seems to be a big issue with Liquid. Character issues always seem to plague this roster and stuff. So apparently that's something that needs to be worried about. So me personally, from an analytical standpoint, from a fan standpoint, I would like to see Liquid throw their name in the ring for the Yekindar sweepstakes, and it would be awesome for them to win it. Now, alternatively, if we're going to stick with the European talent, and I don't really know how else to kind of lead into this, so I'll just go ahead and outright say it. Azur recently announced his free agency, and if we're going to keep pandering to this notion that Nitro does not want to lead, but we are going to keep him on the roster, let's get him an in-game leader that has shown experience, maybe not necessarily winning titles, but experience as an in-game leader at the top level. If you'll remember Azur's Renegades teams of the past, if memory serves me correctly, at Berlin is when they made top 8, when they really just had that show out major event. And of course, they've done this periodically throughout Renegades' tenure when Azur, JKS, and the rest of them were all together, when the boys were together. And I've always been privy to his ability. I've always fancied him as a talent, as an in-game leader. And you know what? Why not? If we can't settle on a North American talent that's going to be able to help Liquid, and we're also in agreement that the timing has to be right with the buyouts and everything. Well, Azur is currently a free agent. He's ready to rock and he's ready to lead. And I think if the price is right, you could get him over to America. So that's just a secondary thought. It's just kind of something that came into my head after I saw the initial tweets. Now, of course, if I'm Mouse Sports, I am keeping Azur on speed dial in case the team does not perform at Dallas. But kind of segueing from that, Liquid should also maybe keep him on the phone books as well, just in case. All right, so looking ahead to Dallas, obviously with the major being over, we see the two groups. We have obviously the 16 qualified teams. And pretty crazy, actually. We have all of the North American teams and American teams, actually, in general, all on the Group B side, which is pretty unfortunate. But whatever, I guess that guarantees a good opportunity for one of these teams to make it through. Opening matchups over here in Group B, we have Furia and Imperial. Right after that, we have Liquid and Cloud9. Of course, Cloud9 being North American only in organization, not talent representation. And then at the second half of the opening round, Group B games, we have Complexity taking Heroic. So Not going to sugarcoat it. 2 tough games to start NA's adventures here on home soil. Liquid versus Cloud9 is going to be tough, especially with Cloud9 coming off a disappointing major run. They certainly expected to be top 8, even potentially making the semis. Even some people that I talked to ahead of the major, like at the experts roundtable that we published on Dust 2, we had certain thought leaders in the scene expecting Cloud9 to even potentially win it. So they clearly have a lot to prove at this event. As far as Heroic is concerned, certainly a strong team. They looked really good at the major, actually, even in defeat. They, obviously making top 8 and getting the draw against Navi. How does it go if they play Ents or Spirit or Furia? Who knows? But obviously that's how the cookie crumbles. So, Complexity is going to have quite the uphill battle to start round 1 as well. So, hopefully not an early exit for America in their only home event, but obviously we will wait and see. On the topic of Dallas, I will be there to cover the event for Dust 2, and I will be there with Jeff. So me personally, I am super excited to finally be back out there, boots on the ground. It's my first time in over 1,000 days, dating back to IEM Chicago 2019. So pretty stoked in that regard. And I can't even verify that 1,000-day thing. I just saw it on like ESL's Twitter or whatever. So I'm just going to go ahead and take their word for it. And so anybody who's going to be at the event, at the arena, of course, shout me out. I'm going to be doing content all week, not just interviews. I'll be doing live stuff. So might be doing some IG stuff, maybe some Snapchat stuff, some live content. For all of you guys to get involved with and see actively as I'm there. If you see me there, of course, shout me out in person. Let's take a picture. Let's meet. That's why we're all doing this. Let's link up. And anybody out there who wants to chat, whether it's an interview, whether you're a player who wants to talk, I've already tweeted out. I'll be looking for any advanced or ECL players at the arena. Any fans want to chat it up, I absolutely want to talk. At one point I was also a fan. You just come into events to check it out. So let's share some ideas and let's get to know each other. So that's pretty much it for me, guys. Of course, before I get out of here, I just want to say a quick shout out to Twists for winning the major with FaZe and becoming the 6th North American player to represent our illustrious region. So huge shout out to Twist. Congratulations on becoming the 6th North American talent to do so. And quite the journey for him, leaving Liquid and moving on to a mixed team, an international team, a European team. Obviously big shoes to fill and not without criticism. Obviously, people definitely had their opinions heading in, whether positive or negative. But, he did not doubt the vision. He did not doubt the process. And here we are, major champion, long before Liquid. So now we got to start having the conversation, is Twist the most successful, the winningest North American player in NACS history? Because in my opinion, it's always been Stewie, since he was the only player to win a major and a Grand Slam in North America. And he's no longer that. So, he's been now joined by Mr. Van Dulken on that studious and illustrious mountain. So that's some food for thought for, the next few days, the next few weeks, the next few months as Twist continues to build his trophy case and FaZe continues to do, the things they're doing. If they come in here and dominate Dallas and add another trophy, I think we can keep having that conversation. But surely Twist has etched himself in the history books as one of the most illustrious North American talents in our history, without a doubt, with this major. So that's it, though. That's it. I promise. We're going on about 25 minutes here, guys. Super, super sorry for the long delay in episodes releases. Definitely counter to what I wanted from this product when I started it. I definitely wanted to be consistent and active with you guys. And like I said, just the nature of the beast with Counter-Strike just everything got really crazy. And then, of course, life happens. So sometimes it's out of your control. But I promise moving forward, we're going to be running this thing smoothly, more consistently. And I want to get probably even more content out to you guys through Crouch Peak. And we're going to see how things go at Dallas. And again, I look forward to seeing you guys. So kind of rambling here at the end like I like to do. But nevertheless, guys, thanks for sticking around with me and tune in to all of the good stuff we have going on at Dallas. Check out dust2.us for all the articles that pertain to that coverage. And pay attention to my Twitter, Lucas at Dust2. And we'll get you all the necessary updates as we progress. So if you're going to Dallas, I'll see you there. If not, thanks for listening, and I'll see you at the next episode.
Press Control to crouch.
The Crouch Peak Podcast.